Okay, hi everybody. So my name is Peter Parnes, and I'm a professor in pervasive and mobile systems, or actually mobile computing. This is an error on my slide here. I don't even apparently know my own subject. I'm also the head of a strategic research effort called Arctic Learning Lab, which is a collaboration between the computer side and the teacher side at LTU regarding teaching and education using modern technology tools. On my blog that you see the link to at the bottom, I've written a number of posts and other presentations, interviews, etc. regarding AI. And so if you're interested in this subject beyond this talk, then you can go to this blog and read more. And you'll also find contact information to me there. So today I'm going to talk about how we can use AI tools to help us with learning. So in the word learning, I use that as an umbrella word for teaching, learning, and everything together. I'm going to talk about what generative AI is, what challenges we have, give you some examples, talk about limitations using this technology and using this for teaching and learning. I'm going to go into the subject of cheating, and also I'm going to, at the end, talk about sort of the future for learning with AI. And then, as Frederick said, following the presentation, we'll have questions and discussions, so we can interact afterwards. So to dive in, generative AI, that's a sub-area of artificial intelligence, where we look at AI that is creating new things. That is, we can create text artifacts, computer code, sounds, music, pictures, videos, 3D models, 3D worlds, and even now computer games as well is coming. And I'll show an example of some of these in a moment. On the right here, you see a few examples of AI-generated output. So the photos here aren't actually photos, but they are AI-generated pictures of me. When it comes to music, there was a recent interesting event where people created music using the artist Drake's voice, and produced a full-length song with that. And that led to a very interesting discussion on copyright. So who owns the copyright? Universal Music, they were very keen on stating that they own the copyright for that song, while European laws say that AI created content cannot be copyrighted, for instance. So, but that's like an ongoing process and will really change the music business, for instance. And that's just one of the areas that will be affected by AI. So one of the obvious things when we come to generating things with AI is generating text. And this has really taken off with the advent of ChatGPT that was released on end of November last year, and it has since become the fastest growing internet service ever on the internet. And here's just two very brief examples to show you what it looks like when ChatGPT generates responses. And in case for those that haven't really tried it yet. So here's just sort of, I'm asking you to explain generative AI. I got a long response, and this is just the first paragraph cut out here in the answer. And then I asked it again, explain it to a 7-year-old child. And then I got a totally different explanation. And this possibility to having various things explained to you is something that I'll come back to during this presentation. So what is ChatGPT? Well, it's first of all, it's created by a company called OpenAI. The company itself was created at the end of 2015 with the goal to create open AI services, as the name says. It was created in the sense that everything would be free and open to everybody, but very quickly they realized that that's really hard to do if you needed a lot of money to create these AI models. And when we talk a lot of money, we're talking billions of kronor here when it comes to sort of investments in these to create these. You basically need supercomputers to create these AI models, and that costs money. And then you need a lot of resources to run these AI services as well. So they sort of became less open and more commercial, but with certain structures that is still investors are limited in the amount of return they can get. Anyhow, so OpenAI have over the years created a number of different AI models and AI applications. For instance, DALL-E 2, which is a service to create AI images, Whisper to do speech to text transfer, InstructGPT, which was a model that sort of before ChatGPT to create text, Codex to create computer code, etc. And they've been working and experimenting with how you can create these models. So ChatGPT is an application developed to generate conversational text by answering questions. So it's a passive engine where we ask questions and it answers them. And we can ask as many questions as we like. It's based on the AI model GPT. And at the time when ChatGPT was released, it was version 3.5. And during this talk, I'll come back and forth a bit about sort of the difference between GPT 3.5 and GPT-4, which is a more commercial version that you have to pay for to get access to. Technically, it's a transformer-based machine learning model that interpolates the next part of the word. And this is really important to remember and note, and because some people seem to over and over get the sort of wrong impression that this is a database, that is like a web search engine where you can ask for URLs, pages, etc., and facts, but it's not. So it's actually just a engine to produce the most probable part of the word in a sentence there. So based on the context, the previous words that it's answered, and what I sort of the context I've given it, then it will then give me text back. Having said that, it does this very, very well. And sometimes it's sort of really scary, impressive, good in sort of how you can reason, etc. With it. So what can we do with ChatGPT, this AI engine for generating text? Well, as I already mentioned, we can answer questions, or it can answer questions for us. We can discuss questions. I can have like a discussion with it. I can have it write text, summarize text. This is something I might personally use quite a lot. I find sort of a long article that somebody put a lot of effort into writing, and then I take that whole text, copy paste that into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize it for me in Swedish, for instance, and I get 1 or 2 paragraphs sort of with the essence of that. And I use this for academic papers, for news articles, etc. And you get very well results for that if you just want to sort of quickly read something without having to read a long text. You can use it to compare text and terms, develop reasoning, give arguments. I've been using this when I'm sort of discussing pros and cons of various things. Then I can ask ChatGPT, do you have any more sort of bullet points for me that could help me promote my idea? And then I can use it for programming as well, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But most importantly, I think the key thing when it comes to ChatGPT and learning is that it can help students understand. And it does this by giving quick answers. It's not that the students couldn't get these answers before, but instead now they get it more condensed. So if they actually ask a question, they get an answer to that question, compared to, say, web search, where they would then search for the answer. They would get a pointer to a web page. They would have to go in and search for the answer on that web page. It can also help us get started with tasks, give us inspiration with writing text and other things. Also give us sort of positive encouragement. Why should I go to the gym today? Ask ChatGPT to very nicely give you encouragement to do that if you need that. But most important, I think, it's that it's always there. So it's like a help teacher or a helper that can answer your question, and it doesn't get tired of answering these questions. Technically, there are some limitations. You are only allowed to ask a certain amount of questions per hour, but that's sort of more a financial limitation due to the cost of running the service. But the AI model itself is there always. So besides creating text, we can also have it creating new images. So these are all images that I created using Stable Diffusion. At the bottom, you see a few photos, or not photos, but AI-generated images of me. And at the top, there's some various examples. Why the Pope? Well, the internet broke a few weeks ago, where it became very, very popular to create images, AI-generated images of the Pope during various things. This is another commercial service called Midjourney, which is sort of, I would say, the best right now, the state of the art when it comes to creating images. This is a fully commercial service where you have to pay. It was partially free before, but now they go to all paid model there. But they create stunningly good photos or AI-generated images that look like photos. And these are just a very, very few examples of that. Then the next step, obviously, when we sort of perfected creating pictures, and then we also can go to creating video. And Stable Diffusion was created by the company Runway, and they are now working on sort of the next step, and that is doing text to video. So the previous was text to pictures, and this is text to video. And here we can just write a short few words, and it will then generate video for us. And this will obviously really change how we create and create moving pictures in the future. I was a director of like Hollywood blockbuster movies that said that in 5 years' time, we will produce full-length Hollywood movies using AI technologies. And this is something you can go in and test today at Runway. And I see now that I misspelled the company name at the top of the slide here. It should be Runway, not Runaway. So moving on from that mistake, we can also use it to help us program. And this is actually one of the very first, I would say, widespread AI applications that came out. So I think GitHub Copilot was released in early 21, I believe, or so it's over 2 years ago now, where it could help us create computer code. And it is based on OpenAI's AI model Codex. And here we can, just from what we write in method names or in comments, this AI engine will then give us suggestions on code to include in our program. So on the left side here, you see it's basically the same example in 2 different programming languages, where the highlighted programming code is what Copilot has given me. So in here, it's sort of fetch tweets from user, parentheses, username, and then it basically gives me all the code to do that. On the right is very specific now for the programmers in the room, a test case where I want to produce tests to test my program if it's actually gives me the correct answer when testing for prime numbers. But it sort of gave me the code to do that. In this case here, I need to know how to program, and this really just saves me time. While the next step then is perhaps to use programming with ChatGPT instead. So ChatGPT can not only give us programming code, but it can also explain the code. And I think this is really key when it comes to learning how to program. In this example here, I've just had a sort of a conversation with it about creating the game Snake, Masken in Swedish, the classical computer game here. And it's connected in this case to the commercial game engine called Unity that we use very much when teaching computer game creation. And here it started off giving me like the first steps of the program, but it also explained it to me. So I got the text sort of, well, this is a program, it does this, this, and this. And then I can ask it more, I can ask it questions, sort of, I don't understand what is sort of line 7 here, or I copy paste a specific line. And then also I can ask it to continue with this example, sort of add more functionality. And on the right, for instance, here, I asked it to add functionality to that the game should end if the snake hits the wall. And in Unity, programming is a mix of writing the code, the scripts, but also you have to change typically a lot of things inside the Unity editor. So here it both gives me the code and tells me what I have to do in the Unity editor. And then obviously I can ask questions on top of that to help it understand. And I can do this with my own programming code, just copy paste in code and ask it to help me fix it, help it explain it to me there. And I've used this with kids and also with students at university, and I find this a really beneficial thing to use. Then we can use this, as I said, in Unity, but instead of having ChatGPT tell us how to do it, we can then connect Unity to ChatGPT itself. So I just write text to create things in my 3D world. So in this case here, I'm creating something. It's not me. This is Keijiro Takahashi that works at Unity in Japan that created this example. And here, instead of doing sort of this manually, creating and putting in the boxes, the lights, now it changes the colors of the lights, and then in the end, we'll sort of run this command, and you will see all the boxes fall down due to gravity. And I'll just give it a few seconds here to catch up. This is nothing that's per se is hard to do, but it's more a question of saving time when using AI commands like this. And this is something that really will change how we use this specific tool, but also is an example of how AI integration will come into many different tools. Whoops. There we go. Another example is type.ai. This is an application to create reports, basically. So it's a report writing tool. It's built on top of GPT, the brain behind ChatGPT. And here I just start with an empty page, and I'll sort of ask me, what do you want to write about? And in this case, here are two examples in Swedish and English. And here is sort of AI and learning, I think is basically what I gave it from the sort of start. And then it gave me all these paragraphs. It gives me suggestions on the right for other things that I want to add to this report. If I'm not happy with the title, I can just highlight that and sort of generate a new one. If I have a bullet list, I can ask you to expand the bullet list. And this is sort of writing text on steroids, and it usually creates very good results as well. Whoops, wrong way. Another example of how we can use ChatGPT is have students have it up all the time. This is an example that comes from Johns Hopkins Institute in the US, where a teacher asked his students to ask ChatGPT questions as soon as they sort of arouse in the brain when they could think about them. And this was also sort of on a master/doctoral level course in computer security. And the conclusion the teacher drew from this was that the students were much more engaged because they could very quickly get answer to the sort of the technical terms. If they didn't understand something, what is an API, for instance, or how would I go about integrating GPT into my application? How do I use that for security testing, etc.? And they would then immediately get the answer, and also they would get sort of follow-up suggestions on more things to discuss. And by that, they could be more engaged in the discussion. I myself haven't had the opportunity to test this yet, but I look forward to doing that and encourage others perhaps to do it as well. Another interesting example is this. This is the former KTH GPT tool, obviously created at KTH by a previous student at KTH, Ludwig Kristoffersson. And he's now renamed this to OpenUni.ai. This is an open service that everybody can use. And this is just a way of consuming lectures. In this case here, I asked it to transcode one of my own lectures that I put on YouTube. So it was a short introduction to ChatGPT and learning in Swedish that I did back in January. And it took about 5-7 minutes to transcribe the video. Basically, it took the audio channel using OpenAI's Whisper API, translated that into text, and then it takes that text and gives to GPT, so I can then ask questions via text on this lecture there. And just to show you the power of the GPT and languages, I on the right here have an example of asking this in Polish. I happen to have a Polish background. My Polish is really bad, so I don't really understand much of what it's actually telling me here, but it's giving me a summary of the lecture itself, and I can then continue on and ask it in different languages there. And this is very important from an inclusion perspective when we have students with different backgrounds, that they can then sort of listen to a lecture, say in English or in Swedish, but then ask questions in their native language to better understand what it's about. So this language thing is, as I said, it's really important, and ChatGPT is really good at sort of answering in different languages. So during conversations with ChatGPT, we can then ask it to change language. For instance, I start off in English, I might realize, oh, my English isn't good enough, I don't really understand those specific words. Then I can ask ChatGPT to answer again, but in Swedish or in some other language, Pashto or Ukraine or whatever. And I can get it sort of in Chinese, etc. Other students that use this quite a lot for translation have told me that it's much, much better than Google Translate, for instance. It gives better context when doing the translations and get better answers from it. So what kind of limitations do we then see with ChatGPT? Well, first of all, the really, really big thing that we have to remember here is that it interpolates text. So I'll just switch to the next slide here just to show an example of this. This is something that it would do back in January. You can't really get it to tell you right now how to grow horse eggs. Horses don't typically lay eggs. But back then it would try to be sort of helpful and tell you how to do it. It's a mishmash then of sort of biology of animals that lay eggs, etc. And this is really, really important limitation to remember. Another limitation is that it has a very limited memory of conversations. And the reason for that it has a limited memory for conversation is that it becomes exponentially more expensive computer-wise. To the bigger memory it has, the more sort of content it has to look at backwards, the more computing resources it will use. So GPT 3.5 has about 5,000 tokens, and GPT-4 has about up to 25,000 tokens via an API, or even up to 32,000 tokens now. And a token here is actually can be a full word, it can be several words, or it can be parts of words. And that's sort of like an internal representation of the conversation and the answer. But after sort of it used up its sort of memory, it will sort of start forgetting what it sort of said itself earlier in the conversation. Another limitation is that the data is included to September 2021. So it doesn't really know very much after 2021. OpenAI has added certain events. For instance, it knows very much about the Ukraine war there, and also they add certain tidbits. I have to be a bit flattered because GPT 3.5 doesn't know who I am, but GPT-4 knows, for instance. So it depends on a bit on what data it has sort of trained on. Another thing that you have to remember is that it doesn't do math very well, because it's sort of been trained on text representation of math, not the math itself. So it has learned the sort of mathematical patterns from text descriptions, which means that it sort of, if you want to ask it sort of what is 12 plus 25 or something, then it will sort of do a textual computational thing out of that, where it tries to take the mean value of this, and typically it will answer wrong. This is becoming better. They're training, they're sort of adding more functionality on top of GPT-4 to do that. And there's also something coming now called plugins, where GPT-4 can break out of its bubble and then talk to external services, among others, Wolfram Alpha, which is an online service for doing math. Something GPT is really good at is explaining math. So you can ask it sort of, I don't understand this integral thing here, or eigenvalues, or whatever. And then it will actually do an excellent job of explaining that to you. And if you still don't understand it, you can ask it again and get a different type of explanation. This with sort of culture thing, I'll come back to a bit later in my talk. So, the big question of cheating. So can students cheat using AI tools? Yes, they can. And it's, I would say, basically everything that we or the students submit in writing can be cheated on. Essays, quizzes, including programming, reports, home exams. ChatGPT is excellent in answering this, especially GPT-4, which is the paid version, is very, very good at sort of answering these types of sort of questions that we typically do in our work. So, but we have to sort of discuss here sort of what is cheating. Well, it's primarily sort of misleading examination. That is, the student is trying to convey that they know something that they don't know. They've used somebody else have done the work for them, and somebody else here can be either a physical person or an AI entity. But what if the student writes that have used ChatGPT or other AI tools? Well, then it comes back to this sort of that it should be independent work. They should have done the work themselves. But the question there is sort of, where is the limit on that? So how much can I use it? How much can the student use it? And I'll come back with an example of that on the next slide here. And also, which tools can be used? When it comes to cheating, a friend of mine said that the greater the impact the test has on an individual's life, the greater the propensity to cheat is. Well, and we've seen this several times over the years, where people are willing to pay quite a lot of money to cheat. There was a big legal case, what, 3-4 years ago or 5 years ago, where people paid up to 200 Swedish kronor to cheat on the högskoleprovet. I don't know if college exam is the right English term there or not, but högskoleprovet at least. And then we also have this whole thing of students not being able to plan. So cheating might not always be that they want to cheat, they don't want to learn, but it's more a question of poor planning and lack of time, that they have a deadline, they want to meet the deadline, but they don't have time to really do the assignment or not. Another example of another AI service is ChatPDF, and this is a free service. You can upload a PDF, as the name says, and you can then ask questions on the content of that PDF. This is just an example of, I was taking a course a few weeks ago on examination, and as a test in that course, I was supposed to answer a quiz with 21 questions on rules and regulations for examination in higher education. And this was, the document was from UHR, where they have then written about this, and I submitted the whole document, and then I just copy-pasted the questions where I'm supposed to answer true and false. And obviously, GPT helped me here cheat, and I got 21 out of 21 correct answers here. So these different tools are out there, and the students will use them. So we need to think about, how do we actually do the testing? Can we detect the cheating then? Well, the classical plagiarism checks don't work, because the text generated from these tools is unique. It's not the same, and plagiarism builds on that. It actually compares to something else. Other suggestions is that you have to have some kind of watermarking, that every tool need to include some kind of hidden marker in there that says that this is generated by AI. China, for instance, they have a law for that, that everything generated by AI has to have a watermark. And for images and music, it's quite easy to hide these watermarks so we humans can't see them. It's easy to wash away. But for text, then it's really, really hard. The only way to do sort of watermarking is to add a text. This was generated by AI or something like that, which is very, very easy to sort of remove if you want to cheat. And then we can detect if it's an AI who wrote the text? Well, the short answer there is no, you can't. There are several tools, commercial tools that do this. You have GPT-0. I say there's a mistake here in my slide. It should be GPT-0. That's a free service. You can go there and test your own texts. And when I test it, I get some random results. You get typically a probability of a certain paragraph being written by AI or not. And I've tested it on my own texts that I wrote way before this, like 20 years ago. In some cases, it tells me that, well, this was written by an AI. In some cases, it says written by a human. So my conclusion is that it doesn't really work. Turnitin is the company behind the original that we typically use here in Sweden for do plagiarism checks. They claim to have a tool that can do this very well. I haven't gotten access to that tool yet. But others that out there that have tested it say that it's sort of on par with the GPT-0, basically doesn't work. And I don't think we'll ever have an AI tool that will be able to answer if a text is written by AI or not, because it really depends very much on the style of the text, and students will obviously learn how to trick these testing tools. So coming back to this allowing AI tools. So here, can we then set a sort of a rule for how much students can use the AI tools? For instance, Stanford, they were very, very early out with sort of saying that, well, students are allowed to use AI tools, but they can only use it for 25% of the work. But what does 25% mean here? If you use ChatGPT to generate text and you copy and paste the text, then it's very easy to say, well, yeah, I can say that this part here is AI generated, this I've written myself. But that's not typically how you use these AI tools. You can, but rather you would then ask GPT a question. You would get some suggestions, some bullet points, and then you say, well, bullet point number 4 here sounds interesting. I'll write a bit about that. And then you perhaps get stuck as a student. You ask ChatGPT to explain certain things to you, and then you understand, well, oh yeah, that's very good. I copy paste one sentence perhaps to my report. I write some more, and then I ask ChatGPT to improve my text to make the language better. So what is the percentage then? So how much have I used these the tool then? And this will also become much, much trickier when we have these AI tools integrated everywhere. The way we have them in every writing tool that we use. We can also say that it's a bit of a question of democratization of cheating. Students have always been able to cheat, but now everybody can cheat on the same level. It's become sort of just as easy for everybody to cheat. And this also leads to the question, have we as teachers been too lazy when it comes to sort of examination and testing? And what is the next step here? Should we only go back to paper and pen in a closed room, do oral examination, a combination of written reports with oral examination, perhaps is one of the keys here. But to me, it's a question of more of trying to capture the whole process, where we look at not only sort of the end result, but looking at sort of at the learning path. What have the students learned during this course or during this assignment? Can also AI perhaps help us with the examination itself? I've been doing some testing with that, where I've asked ChatGPT to ask me questions to judge if I know a subject or not. And it works surprisingly well. So go out and try that yourselves if you're interested. So if I answer sort of vaguely on the questions that are in a way to indicate that I don't know the answer, I just generate a lot of words, then actually ChatGPT will continue asking me questions until it sort of feels, well, you know this or you do not know it. But if I then ask it sort of to the point and give you the answer immediately, then it will actually continue on to the next question. So it sort of understands my answers to it, which is sort of a bit sort of spookingly good in this case. As I said before, these tools will then come in everywhere. We will get sort of these integrated in every tool. Microsoft have invested 110 billion Swedish kronor in OpenAI so far, and they own 49% of the company. And they've then integrated this into a number of different services. I say another mistake in my slides here. It says Bing plus ChatGPT. It should say Bing plus GPT, not ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is OpenAI's own web service, while the GPT is the underlying AI brain. And Microsoft have integrated this into Bing, where you can then combine the AI model with searches online. They're also integrating this into Office and Teams and Microsoft Designer and Copilot I talked about before, and generating a lot of new tools based on AI. And just not to only talk about Microsoft, here's an example from Google. They're obviously also working on this. Tests show, though, that they are quite far behind OpenAI when it comes to what they've released publicly so far. But here to the left, this is just an example of how it might look in Google Docs, where you just, from an empty page, then just tell it what to write, and it will write it for you. And on the right, there's an example from Google Search on mobile. And this is something that will come into every tool that we use in the future. Can we? Know what? I'll come back to this at the very end if I have time for this. But I wanted to spend a moment on AI and creativity. And here it can be also a question of sort of, are we overusing these tools? When it comes to AI and creativity, when we create something new, it actually requires thinking, time, and effort. We need to do something. So is there a risk that we'll see an overuse of AI for creative tasks? Will we lose creativity and rely on the AI? When it comes to images, we've seen this very much now, that AI wins photo competition, it wins art competitions, etc. Because the result is so good that we can't really say if it's a sort of AI generated photo or not here. But at the same time, we need to look at skill versus creativity. For instance, I personally, I'm really bad at drawing. I can't paint, I can't draw, but I feel quite confident I can use the AI tools. So I have ideas that I want to show, I want to create images, but I can't do that with my hands, or neither sort of drawing by hand or digitally. But using AI, I can then tell it to sort of realize and create a photo or an image from my thinking. So that's a sort of important aspect of here. But will we see too much new content? Well, yes, we will. We're sort of drowning in AI images. We are seeing this, and this is something that we need to think about also when it comes to the whole academia, publications. Will we see a sort of a overcreation of texts, papers, when we have these tools? And I think we will have, that is a true risk, that we will see a lot of papers that are 100% AI generated. This has been the case over the years. People have been joking about it. Less important conferences have actually accepted AI-generated papers before, but now the papers become so good, so it will help us with doing our research and then producing the papers from that research. Other examples, more effective online meetings. Imagining that you came late to my presentation here and you just wanted to get a catch-up. So what did Peter talk about during the first 5 minutes? Then you would be able to get that with the new Zoom IQ, for instance, where you basically summarize it for you. Microsoft Teams have the same functionality here. I've been talking a bit with Zoom to see if we could get early access to Zoom IQ, but they haven't come back to us regarding that. But we're trying to do that for our sort of university Zoom instances, just to be able to test that. So moving along and talking a bit about sort of the future here. Well, today, AI is better than humans at a number of these different tasks. And here are just 5 examples. In the picture here on the slide, you see graphs sort of going upwards. On the Y scale, we have sort of the AIs, how much better it is than humans. So the performance, the benchmark there would be at 0. So that would be sort of a average human there. -100 is that it doesn't know anything, and then it goes up to sort of +20 on the scale here. That is sort of, it's better than humans. And for all of these different tasks, we can see that with these AI tools, they become better than humans. So handwriting recognition, speech recognition, image recognition, reading comprehension, language understanding. And also from these graphs, we can see that the speed with how fast we sort of can create new systems that learn new things, I mean, it's basically fully sort of vertical here. So it just we try to do something in the AI area, and then just a year or 2 later, we have an AI that can do that. But there are a few things today that AI can't do, and one is sort of read our emotional intelligence, or emotions, I mean, also give the AI emotional intelligence to figure out, so how do we actually feel when it comes to learning? Can we then detect, are the students interested? Are they learning? Are they frustrated there? And I think that's something really key that we will see in the future. The GPT brain is really good at problem solving and decision making today, but it will become much better in the future. Personalization, the AI services today, they don't really know very much about us. They don't have a history of us as individuals here, and that is something we'll see in the future. Just as I could train an AI to produce images of me, I did that by taking about 20 selfies of myself in different angles, and then I trained the AI, sort of a subpart of the AI model, for about 25 minutes on a high-end graphical card. And then I could generate images where I could include me in the overall AI model. The same thing we'll see when it comes to text in the future. And imagine having this for your course, etc., for your whole university, where you can basically sort of give in sort of information that is just connected to this course, or looking at from another angle, having information that's connected to this student. And I'll come back to that in a moment. And creativity, I already talked enough about that. But the final thing here is multimodality. Today, when we interact with these AI engines, we primarily do that through text. But what if we then could add images to it? In this case here, we have a lot of balloons tied down with strings to, I guess, a stone or metal or something here. And you all understand immediately what would happen if I cut the strings here. Well, the balloons would fly away. But this is actually quite a tricky problem for an AI to understand that will happen. And with the GPT-4, this is actually something that you will get in the future. They're testing this in a sort of limited sense right now, but they will make this available for others. A more important example here is to help people that are visually impaired, blind people, that they can't see what's in front of them, and then they can use an AI to tell them, and then they can interact with sort of the AI to help them understand what they're actually looking at. And that is actually available right now in a test application called Be My Eyes. So looking a bit more on the future. So AI research have over the years said a few things that we shouldn't let AIs do, sort of these AI brain. One, we shouldn't give it access to the internet. 2, we shouldn't allow it to execute computer programs that it's created itself. And 3, we shouldn't teach it about how people should be influenced or could be influenced. And right now, this year, we're basically doing all of this. And according to sort of the AI scientists, this will lead to disaster. We shouldn't be able to do this, especially the number 2 here combined with number 1 is quite scary, where the AI can then create programs, it can then execute them, it can use that to fetch information from the internet, but also use that to improve itself. So to basically change how the AI works. This leads then to something called Agent AI. And this is where we so far have used these AI services very much in the sense that they're fully passive. We ask them questions, we ask them to do things for us, but they don't sort of have any autonomy. They don't do things themselves. But here we instead go to that we actually give them that control. So with Agent AI, we can then allow the sort of a overall AI to launch new AI agents for it. It can then go out and fetch information on the internet, execute program code, and there were some examples of, or not example, but program code to do this released in March this year. So just just over a month ago. One of them is AgentGPT, another is Baby AGI. There are several now, God mode, etc., where you can use this to execute higher sort of tasks. So here's just an example that I tried with AgentGPT to create the perfect chocolate praline in Swedish. So at the very bottom here, you see in Swedish the goal here. Skapa ett helt nytt recept för världens bästa chokladpralin. And here the overall AI went out and then created a number of sort of sub AIs that create and try to sort of research various things. And here you can see the current tasks here. Research existing chocolate praline recipes to identify common ingredients and techniques. Generate a list of unique ingredients and flavor combinations that could be used to create a truly innovative chocolate praline, for instance. And another example when I used this was to plan a 1-week vacation in Stockholm. I'm up in Luleå, and here the agent GPT then went out and it started then looking at websites, trying to find airline tickets. But an interesting thing was that after a while, it then started creating programming code to gather information from various sites about flights and hotel rooms. And then it launched another AI to improve the code. So while it was actually using the code, another AI would at the same time improve the code to make it better. It's sort of a bit diverged on that. This is really, really early stage so far, but I think it has really positive possibility, but also really scary possibilities here, what it actually can do. And this also connecting back to education is that here we no longer sort of ask it to write like a specific text thing or create one image for us, but rather here we can give it sort of an overall text of sort of solve this problem for me, where the AI would then generate the report. It will include graphs, it will include images in that. And talking also about graphs, OpenAI demoed just last week that the coming in ChatGPT is to understand the data. So you could upload a spreadsheet with tens of thousands of lines of code or data points in there, and it would then make sort of try to draw conclusions of that data and generate graphs from it. And you can ask it questions of that data. And ChatGPT will also be able to execute program code in the future. That's also something they demonstrated. So approaching the end here. So what kind of effects will we see in the future? Well, we will be using AI all the time without knowing it. Today, when we use our mobile phones, we use internet services, it's AI behind there, sort of recommendation engines, spell corrections. If you try to add something in Apple's calendar, for instance, you would immediately get very precise suggestions on times and titles and places, so you don't even have to fill in all the data when adding it to the calendar. And that is an AI, that's machine learning sort of running on the device itself. Then the language models will become much, much more accurate. Today, they're scarily good, but the tools will get faster and better, but also cheaper. And we'll see a number of AI engines in the future that that will be available. So today OpenAI is really sort of the market leader here, but we will see open source alternatives that will sort of, based on the knowledge and understanding of how to create these engines and AI models, that will sort of drive this very, very quickly forward and getting even better tools in the future. So when it comes back to learning, we can look at it sort of what is available today to the students, and then we can sort of interpolate that and look at what will be available in 2 years, what will be available in 5 years. And I think there will be sort of tremendously good things out there. And there's a lot of new tools coming. It's like every day there's like 10, 15, 20 new AI tools being released to do various specific things. So, do we need to regulate AI? Well, there's been a recent, very big call for that, for this sort of, that we should pause this. Elon Musk was very sort of pushing this. Then just a week later, he announced that he's creating his own AI company called AI.X. or X.AI, or X, where he doesn't like that ChatGPT or the GPT brain is so polite and doesn't want to answer all our questions. He wants to create the truth GPT that will answer everything. OpenAI, on the other hand, they want the world to get used to AI. That's sort of their sort of approach here. So they want to release this sort of slowly going forward, instead of like releasing the perfect AI model, say GPT-7 in the future that can do everything. And this is something that will sort of help us sort of use these various tools. Please remember here that ChatGPT was only released 6 months ago or 5 months ago to us, and it's really changed already how we use these tools. The EU have proposed some very, very tough rules when it comes to regulations here, that all AI services should become so-called high-risk services in the future. And that means that the companies need to be very transparent in how they sort of how they work the AI tools, what data they've been tested on or trained on. For instance, OpenAI have not told openly what kind of data the GPT brain is being trained on, for instance. But with this regulation, they would have to do that. So, implications for the educational systems. One of my key or my pet ideas here, my really vision is this, and that is adaptive learning systems, where we have a learning system that can cater to the individual, where we can go back to some Socratic way of learning, where we learn by interaction, where I can ask questions. And I spend all my learning through discussion. And here I would have sort of an AI entity that could help me with that. At the same time, where it would then suggest topics to me. If you're interested in this topic and also connect that to real learning of our brains, then I can really recommend Torkel Klingberg's latest book, the Framtidens digitala lärande. So Torkel Klingberg is a professor at Karolinska, researching on how our brain actually works and learn. And it's a really, really good book that I can recommend to everybody. So, but using AI systems, it will sort of, in the short term, it will help us and help the teacher get more time for the deeper discussions, because it will also help us with administrative tasks, that we can use AI to do self-correcting system, to give direct feedback, help us summarize things, simplify the administrative tasks that perhaps takes some time from our sort of teacher work. Can it also mean that we'll get sort of an equality in the learning? And here I'm really interested in hearing what you think. And that is, the teacher isn't always available. Especially on university level, I think we as teachers, we perhaps have more time to help the students answer the questions, etc. But in lower grade, in grundskolan, in the compulsory school, there's very many sort of children that needs help per teacher. And here perhaps AI could help out with that, where it is sort of this help teacher that can answer questions all the time. It is available 24/7. So if a student is sitting there practicing, training for an exam, and they're sitting there at 4 a.m., the teacher obviously isn't available. And they can be also don't want to ask questions. They don't want to feel stupid in front of the teacher or in front of the class, that they then can use an AI to explain things to them. And not only explain, but also, I think something I forgot to mention in the very, very beginning here, is that some of my students have told me that they use this to confirm that they've actually understood something, that they ask the GPT to explain it to them, just to verify that they have understood things. So can it also mean that we'll have faster ways of consuming sort of the education, that we'll learn faster from this? Torkel Klingberg, he really proposes that. He talks about that in his book, that we perhaps should shorten the whole educational system. And what does that mean on university level? Does that mean shorter programs? Probably not. Probably means that we will add more content instead. If the students will learn faster, we'll just fill that up with more courses. So just to conclude, if you're interested in this, I'm having an online course starting 1st of June that you can reach on this URL. And as I'm out of time, I just wanted to really encourage you to go out and try ChatGPT, experiment with it, get it to help you with doing exams, with your teaching planning, and use it together with your students as well. With that, thank you very much for listening. And as I said initially, you'll find much more information about this topic on my blog, and you'll find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and other sources. And feel free to connect afterwards if you have any questions that you want to ask. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, and thank you, Peter. I will first stop the recording.